Greetings, fellow StarCraft enthusiasts. This is Tiberius, and this is a 1v1 game of me playing against Awkward Guy, the red Protoss in the bottom left here, and I am the blue Terran in the upper left here. As you can see, this is a TvP matchup, which has been my best matchup for many months now, and I've long considered doing a VOD of my TvP strategy, which is in some ways a bastardization of another popular TvP thread that was high in popularity many months ago, created by a fellow named Iacoic. But there's a variation on it, and it transitions out of it far better than he did. His version was kind of all in. This is very solid, can deal with every potential Protoss attack and composition, and has netted me about an 80% win rate on the ladder. Perhaps more in certain times of the metagame. But through thick and thin, it's held strong. Now, the beginning build order is pretty much your standard Terran build order. It doesn't deviate in any fashion until you get your orbital. Really, it is incredibly standard. It is your 10 supply depot, 12 barracks, 13 gas, constant SCV production, orbital at 15, all the basics. Now against Protoss, use a scout. Never a bad idea to scout, never a bad idea to look for a forge, how many gases he has, 2 gates, etc. And what's nice about scouting Protoss is that you can keep that SCV in there for quite a long time, until after the cybernetic score is finished. Because all he has are probes and zealots, and they're just going to chase you around, and you can just laugh and play tag with them and win tag all the time. Once your barracks finishes, as always, throw your orbital up, put another start marine production, and throw a supply depot down. Now, this barracks, do not stop building marines from it. Don't queue up marines, but just do them one at a time. Similarly, when your orbital finishes, one at a time SCV production, and do not finish. Now, once this supply depot finishes, the money works out pretty well to be able to throw a factory down just about immediately. And as it's finishing, factory down. And constant marine production, build another marine wizard pants. There you go. Now, what am I doing with this factory? I'm actually going to be going for a Hellion drop. Now, Hellion drops are very good against Protoss, especially if used correctly. And what it does is it gives you harass potential while not really losing too much. It's only about 300 minerals for your Hellions and 100 for your medvac. It's not a huge investment, and it's very quick. You can get out of there if a situation is sticky. Once the factory finishes, throw a starport down and build a Hellion. Do not stop building Hellions until you have 3 of them. You wanted to build a supply depot at around 20 supply, which is this guy, and when he finishes, build another supply depot. Once again, constant marine productions, and here is the key to this all, the bunker. Now that seems a little bit silly. Why is this the key to it? Well, if this Hellion drop goes as planned, if I build another Hellion, then likely Protoss is going to counterattack with some way. And since you're going Hellion drop, you are not going to have very much in terms of defense. A counterattack is deadly against you. Bunkers, however, are Protoss's natural enemy. And if you have 1 or if you have 2, there is virtually nothing at this point in the game with this drops where you would be vulnerable to Hellion drop that they can attack you. You are pretty much impervious to everything. You might need to pull some SCVs to repair, but you should be good. Now, I actually built my second gas a little bit early. Normally I do this on 1 gas, which is risky, but it's effective. This is actually pretty much the quickest 3 Hellion drop that you can do on 1 gas. And not be utterly terrible. Now, once that starport finished, you build your medvac, and here you go for a drop with your 3 Hellions. Your 3rd Hellion and your 1st medvac come up pretty much at the same time. Now, put 2 tech labs, 1 on your starport, 1 on your factory, and begin another starport. As you can tell right now, we're going to be transitioning into 2-port Banshee immediately after this finishes. Also, we're wanting to build another supply depot. Mules constantly. Now, here comes the drop. Protoss has a second on the way, before us, mind you. which usually actually happens with this build. Now, here comes the drop, and I'm going to pause it here, mostly because this is not the prime example of Hellion damage, which to some degree is good, which is why I chose this replay. It doesn't do as much damage as it could. Oftentimes, it outright kills them and they leave the game. And let me show you that. Let me show you how to really effectively micro-Hellions. So here's a look at a Hellion drop that we execute, once again against a Protoss opponent, and at the exact same game timing, because the build hasn't changed, because the build's identical. And it is fairly devastating, as it often is, I'd say, in about 65–70% of my Hellion drops. I do significant damage and kill at least half of their probes. I'd say maybe at least 40% of their probes. I think that sounds pretty fair, pretty accurate. It is surprising how poorly people are at microing their probes away from Hellions, especially this early when they're not expecting it and the Hellion appears in the back of their mineral line. So let's see what happens. I'm actually going to play it on slower, just so you get an idea. Now, most Protosses are going to have their units in front of their base, because that's how they're here. Get your Hellions at the very edge of the mineral line. You can either put them here or putting them over here at the top also works. What you want your opponent to do is click all his probes and send them in the exact opposite direction of your Hellions, which is exactly what this opponent, Stud Muffin, is doing. As long as you are towards the lip of it, they're all going to line up for you, and you don't need to do anything other than follow them, and by the time that your flame attack cooldown is up, right-click on one of the probes, and you do massive damage. Check it out. Now, their units here, if they're lined up like this, just go for it. Get behind and attack. Totally worth it. These three Hellions, they're expendable, but you don't want to use you don't want to lose them stupidly. If you can get probe kills, get the probe kills. If it's a risk and you're just going to chase after a couple probes and running into a couple stalkers, don't do it. But since they're all lined up here nicely, find them again, see how they're nice and lined up, and again. Keep running. Forward. Kiting away from exactly. Now, oftentimes, split up their workers, just go hunt for them in packs. You are faster than the stalkers. You are faster than the stalkers. If they come and try to send stalkers at you, and your Hellions were over here, and they send stalkers down through this section over here, all you need to do is run your Hellions down and around. And by the time that their stalkers have caught up to where you had been, you can just bolt around the other side, maybe get into their expansion a little bit. You have the speed advantage, and they can't catch you if you do a good enough job of running around them. So that's really the key. Run around their units unless they're nice and clumped, in which case, go for the suicide, lose your units for the much greater task of wiping out and ruining their economy. Alright, so here we are, back into our original game, right back at the Hellion drop part. It does good damage here, but not nearly as much as I'm actually accustomed to with these Hellion drops. So let's see how they play it out, and what we do from here. Slow as well, trying to get ourselves right in that mineral line. Attacking the workers as they clump up. Now, he was very good at splitting his workers, didn't let them clump at all. Stalker bring in his attack units at the same time. I'm just picking off workers that I can. And running away, not letting him do much damage. He tries to get me. Well, I'll just pick up. Okay. Goodbye. You know, if it doesn't look like you'll be able to get that much damage done left, if he's cornered you, if he's trapped you, if he's got all his probes, you know, away, then hey, just pick up and leave. It is a massive psychological damager to your opponent here to let him know that you have done damage and he has done none. He is objectively behind at this point. Now, let's actually take a moment to pause and recap where we are. From that Hellion drop, we have constant SCV production, constant Marine production, 2 bunkers with full Marines, such that any counter attack at this point, largely induced by that attack, they'll sometimes all-in you at this point. It should be able to defend against an all-in, should be able to defend against a 4-gate. You have 2 starports, one of which you just lifted off. We didn't get to that, but as this is happening, or immediately after its completion, go ahead and lift off that factory on that tech lab and pop down to starport. You start making double Banshee. 2 Banshees simultaneously. And what's actually slightly more important than that is that you start your command center. Your command center should be done at some point either during the Hellion harass or immediately afterwards. If you can't concentrate at that many places at once, don't worry about it. Starting it once you finish the harass is just fine. One way or the other, you will have banked up enough minerals to put it down, which is wonderful. Just start it immediately when that harass is done. You are defended, you're going to be in a good state. And once that goes down, then you can start putting your double Banshee really into production. Start building supply depots as well. As you can see, your supply is about 45, 51. You're going to get supply blocked quickly if you don't start throwing down supply depots. I'll usually just do 1 supply depot continuously making at that point, and that's pretty nice. And still, barracks, constant Marine production if you can. Things can get a little bit chaotic here macro-wise, but and Marines are less important at this point than the double Banshee. But if you have the minerals and you have the APM for it, please, please, please make as many Marines as you can. Alright, so let's continue with this game. Now, the general goal of this strategy that I have, see the observer, pop out the bunkers, get Marines under it, and it's usually a good idea to ruin any sense of their scouting, especially if you're going for this kind of a weird build. Making Banshees, making Marines. But as I was saying, the general point of this build is Marine Banshee Thor. Banshees do absolute ludicrous damage to Protoss units. Absolutely. They're the highest DPS, I believe, unit for Terran. The highest DPS. Now, on a single target, I should say. They attack surprisingly fast, but their weakness is that they are fragile. They snap very easily. So, any sort of Protoss anti-air, Stalkers, Phoenixes, High Templar, etc., just kind of break it. So, what are you going to do about that? Now, that is where Marines and Banshees come in. I'm just going to pause this real quick. I'm sorry, Marines and Thors come in. They are there to tank the damage. They are not there to attack. They are there to tank damage for your Banshees. Your Banshees are the machine gun, the brittle mage of your party that will just absolutely get obliterated if people decide to focus them and target them down. However, for the most part, people aren't going to be targeting them. And Protoss has notoriously bad anti-air. Stalkers are okay with Blink against anti-air, not good against Banshees. One-on-one, Banshees will take out Stalkers, in fact. And with that buffer of Thors and Marines, they are absolutely helpless. Absolutely helpless. Now, also getting a Raven in there, well, we'll talk about the Ravens. Well, let's keep going. I start putting the bunkers, my 2 bunkers that are out here, I start remaking them over in the front of my expo, and throw it into an orbital when it finishes, continuous Banshee production, and I get a Raven in there. You want one to